Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode with your host Chad. Today I'm talking to you from Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. It's 7 p.m. and sunny with 19 degrees Celsius. So today I wanted to dive into the topic, what are the first impressions in this country? And I think first impressions are quite valuable. They can tell us a lot about how the following situations might turn out. And if you remember meeting someone for the first time, well, the first impressions, they will stick. And they might also give deeper insights. So for this reason, let's start. And I was in Korea previously. I was in Busan. It's a coastal city, a big city in South Korea. It's a beach city, but also a workers' city. And there's many great things. But Korea can be a different topic another time. So I flew from Korea to Mongolia. And while doing the research, well, I saw that the airport is in Mongolia, well, 50 kilometers from the city Ulaanbaatar. So that's usually not a big problem if the airport is connected to the city by a train line, which is not the case in Mongolia. And I was supposed to arrive at midnight. So as you can imagine, I thought about sometime if I should pre-book a special shuttle taxi or if I should just land and see how things go. And this was what I did actually. I ended up sharing a taxi with another Korean tourist. So that went fine. But it also shows you one thing about Mongolia. It's a big country. It's the home of Genghis Khan, if you remember, who is, well, historically famous, and the Mongol Empire was huge. And it's still interesting to see that the airport is 50 kilometers from the city. So that went well. I checked in at night in my hotel, and the next day I tripped the city for 10 hours. You know, that was yesterday. And I was walking around downtown and I went to parks. I went to two different museums. I went to the National Museum, which is very interesting. But yeah, on many of the floors, I wasn't allowed to take pictures or videos. I don't know the reasons behind. And sometimes I saw a painting of Lenin. And, well, I don't know about much of Eastern European or Russian history. But this was a first impression too. And I think it can crystallize some patterns. Another thing that will draw your attention is walking through the cities. You will see the Mongolians, they have their own language. They're using the Cyrillic alphabet. So the Cyrillic alphabet is what the Russians are using. In Central Europe or Europe in general, we use the Latin alphabet, and you're familiar with it. If you're learning English or German or French, and even Turkish is using the Latin alphabet. But in Mongolia, they're using the Cyrillic. But along with that, at many buildings, the advertising or the hotel names, they still have big Latin signs. So I'm not talking about 2 or 3 different venues, no, and there's many places that also have Latin signs, and that's quite interesting to see because it resembles an environment of a transit country, which Mongolia actually is. I mean, it's in the middle of Central Asia, I'd say. It's next to China, to the right, if you look at the map. Then in the north, you have Russia. And, well, you have to the southwest, you have the Turkic countries. So it is quite in the middle of things. And maybe this is the reason why they have different alphabetic wordings and signs. But yeah, as I told you, they also have their own language, the Mongolians, and in the museum or outside at some historic stones or writings, you can also see their writing style, and they have, I don't know what it is called. I didn't do the deep research, but they write from the top to the bottom. It's quite interesting to see. And yeah, that's that about this. And in terms of English, well, some Mongolians understand English, so it's not like impossible. I make my way when I have questions. They understand at least the bare minimum somewhat or some words. And yeah, that's also, well, good for international tourists coming from the West. What else could we say? Well, I was in the National Museum yesterday, and what's caught my interest was that there's a lot of, I mean, stones, historic stones that were digged out from the soil and that have old alphabetic writings on them, whether it's Mongolian or Old Turkic or other languages. Mongolia is in the middle. And I also saw that different floors had different epochs or eras, let's say, in the National Museum. One was about the Mongolian Empire, the Great Mongolian Empire. It was immense. And another floor was about, for instance, the nomad or Turkic epochs. And another floor was about a different topic, much earlier or after. So that was a quite nice structure. And yeah, that's that. Then what else? Well, if you are going out for 1 or 2 days, well, you will feel the weather. So when I arrived at midnight in Ulaanbaatar, it was around, I think, 6-7 degrees. That's cold, man. We're in May, and in most Asian countries, the temperatures are at 25 to 30 and plus, even more, 35 if you head towards the equator. Mongolia is just entering spring, and yeah, so during the day, it was the day after basically arriving, it was 25, 27 degrees. Today, the max dropped to 16 degrees. So there is a high volatility. And I talked also earlier today, I met 2 local Mongolians, and it was amazing talks I had with them. So I met them through couchsurfing, if you remember. I have an episode about it. It's for meeting travelers and locals. And they're a couple, they're married, they have 3 children. And they also told me when we were walking outside, well, that Mongolians prefer it a little colder than hotter. That's interesting because I'm someone who's on the opposite spectrum. I would rather have 25 or 30 than have 15 degrees, you know, like that's who I am. So that's also a nice first impression. Then which other impressions did I see? The traffic. So the reason I walked 10 hours through the city yesterday, well, to see a lot of things on the way, not to skip them, of course, but there's also buses in the city. And I could have taken a bus, but after seeing for 2 days how the traffic always gets stuck, even at 3 p.m. sometimes, I decided, okay, I'm not gonna do it for now, but I'm just gonna take my time and walk around. And yeah, traffic is immense in Ulaanbaatar, and Mongolia has a population of 3 million, and half of that population is living in this city. Then I don't think there is a metro subway line. I haven't seen any walking in the city center. And there's, as far as I know, no tram lines. So this is the reason why people are car dependent. Along with the cars and the weather, well, you will have some challenging air quality. It's both the volatility in the weather, from hot to cold, but also the exhaust fumes that will hit your skin over time and will dry it out. So be aware of that. And yeah, I'm already feeling it, like my skin feels dry, and this is why I bought some lotion earlier. Yeah, that's also one of the first impressions. Then what can I say? Well, there's some parks, there's some very nice architecture in the city. It has its own unique architecture and some resemblance to, I think, Russian architectures, but also many Mongolian unique patterns in the building. What do I mean by that? Well, some of the buildings resemble, even the tall buildings, have like their roofs or shapes are in such a form that they resemble nomadic tents, and I find this amazing. I'm really into art and architecture, and seeing these different styles is just energizing and super fulfilling for me. And it feels good to see something unique. I'm always looking for unique stories and impressions, and that's just amazing. And if you remember the tents that have a round shape, they're called yurts. They're quite common in Turkic countries. What are Turkic countries? They're like Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Turkey nowadays, and Kazakhstan. Like in these steppe countries, there were a lot of nomadic people, and they had those yurt tents, and also they have been used in and across Mongolia. And I've seen some of these tents just like set up right in the city. The Mongolians are using it in the middle of downtown. I'm not talking about 10 or 20, but like 2 or 3 I have seen at different spaces. And it just shows you how interwoven it is. So I don't know if the government is doing it on purpose to preserve the cultural heritage, or if it's just a functional requirement and necessity by the people. But that's also something you will see. But it's not only that. I've seen new modern buildings. I've seen a bar next to a main road that was in the form of a yurt building, but it was not from like some thin cotton material or something else. But no, it was like built of cement and proper walls, and had glass windows, like it was a yurt architecture. So that's amazing stuff, guys. And this is always, these kinds of things are what I'm looking for when I'm traveling. My friends that I met today through couchsurfing, I was talking about it. So they're a couple, have 3 kids, and they told me also to go out of Ulaanbaatar for some time. I'm still planning on some day trips, but I also told them I'm someone who likes being in the big city, also to meet the locals and see their lifestyle. And that's what I see. I see these types of architectures. I see what they display in museums, because I also believe museums show a lot about how a state wants to represent itself to the outside world. And yeah, it's good stuff, guys. And about the people I met today, well, I'm not gonna say their names, but yeah, the guy, he lived some years in Germany, around like 4, and he lived also, I think, for 1 year in Switzerland and 1 or 2 years in France. So he got around. He speaks some German, and his wife speaks German. So I asked her, why do you speak German? She said she went to German school in Mongolia where they teach German also. Then I asked, so okay, is German more popular than English? She said, no, it was just by chance that she went to that school. And there's some people that want also in Mongolia to go to Europe or live in Germany. So it's not tough to understand, knowing how everyone is craving to go to Central Europe. But yeah, like I could talk to them in basic German. They were understanding me. And yeah, that's added an extra layer of fun because they could practice their German with me while I could also understand some stuff they wouldn't have been maybe able to express in English, you know. And the guy, he was working for different factories in Europe, and eventually he decided to move back after a couple of years to Mongolia due to his family and everyone being there, and he hadn't seen them for many years, like I think more than 5-6 years he has not seen or visited them. And yeah, it's very nice to get together with locals, and they're asking how you find the country so far, and they're giving you tips and recommendations or where to go. And yeah, so good stuff. So if you have questions about these kinds of things, you can always ping me. So what I talked about with them, one of the things was actually religion, you know. And I said, okay, so what I came across while traveling in Asia, I said I was in Japan and I was in Korea, and I was surprised in Japan that I saw some churches across the country, and also in Tokyo, where I was more than a week. And when talking to Japanese people, they said, yeah, it's because, well, as people go there to marry. I said, okay, I mean, is that your religion? They were saying, no, it's not because of that, but because they just use it to marry. So it sounded like, I don't know if it's a fate, a trend, something like this. I will ask more and more people in the coming weeks if I have the chance. But then for Korea, man, I was surprised. There were even more churches, you know, like many, many more than in Japan. And when I talked to local Koreans, they also said, yeah, like many people, they get married there. And I asked a local Korean girl, and she said, yeah, like the old generation, they belonged to former religion in Korea. So it was like Buddhism is mainly, I suppose. And then, well, she said, well, the thing is, with growing urbanization and growing cities, eventually her grandma joined a Christian group because a lot of her friends or circle started going to the churches. So to participate, she said this was how it was done with her own experience. And so these were first impressions I had about this topic in Japan and Korea. Then I asked those friends from today, the couple, I said, okay, like I've seen this and that happen, like what's the situation in Mongolia? And then this guy, I don't know, I hit a nerve, so he really wanted to talk about it. And he said, yeah, like there's like a lot of shamanism, and shamanism was like decades ago, like the most spread, if you call it spiritual guidance or a religion in Mongolia here. But he said he was a shamanist himself, and he now converted into Christianity. So it was quite interesting to see. I didn't expect to pick up a story from here, you know, like, and so I was very curious to learn more, and I said, okay, like, how did you find your way to that, and like, well, what about Buddhism? So, and he told me, yeah, like, when he was living in Europe, he was going through a tough time, and like personally, and he was drinking and smoking. And then eventually one day his mom sent him a book because of some things that happened in her environment. And then the book was the Testament. So he read the Bible, you know, and he said, well, over time, like he identified more and more with some of the stuff inside, and he also had some spiritual events happening to him, that like, well, that a voice told him, for instance, that he doesn't need to be afraid, and because he said due to shamanism, and they apparently believe there's many spirits that can enter one's body, and he said there's also bad spirits that try to misguide you. He said it was very challenging for him with shamanism, and he heard many, well, he had a bad impact or influence from these kind of things. I'm trying to keep it short and not to overcomplicate it. And well, and then he said, well, after reading the Bible and seeing some stuff, he decided more and more like to embrace it. And then he had those spiritual religious encounters. I'm not gonna go into detail. And he somehow found his way, and his wife eventually also like found her own way to this. And it's interesting because then I said, okay, but what about like Buddhism, you know, like, I mean, it's also quite common as far as I know in Mongolia, and they both, and well, like, obviously I'm telling you what I encountered. I'm not saying I'm not making any judgments. Well, they said like, yeah, like Buddhism, yeah, it's common, but also like there's some things that Buddhism in Mongolia differs from other regions in Asia from, you know, like the Buddhism isn't exactly the same. And they said it was more like, it was more similar decades ago. Now it's a little different. And they also said like that the Dalai Lama, the spiritual figure of Buddhists, as far as I understand in Asia, he also does not see maybe some things through clearly in regard to Mongolia as a geographic region. So this is their opinion. I'm just restating it, and yeah, I leave these first impressions to you, and that was why I didn't expect to come up with a story like this. And then I said, okay, but like, why? How is it like? How is it Christianity spreading here, maybe in Mongolia or Korea? And like they give a personal experience. They said, okay, this guy that I was with today in the cafe and his wife, well, the guy was, as I told you, going through a bad time, and when he was in Europe, and eventually he found his way. And then when he found his way and he changed his behavior, he stopped drinking and smoking. People like were curious, like, well, what did you do? Why did you change? How did you change? You know, like, I mean, it's just a human nature, naturally. And well, he said what he did. He said like, yeah, he read this, he encountered this, and he's on this path. So like, he was living as a good example, basically. This is the essence of it, guys. He was leading by example. He was leading by example. And when people see this, I think it makes a lasting impact, because they know, you know, it's like you walk the talk. So if you tell people things but you do the opposite, it's not going to have an effect. But if you walk the talk, man, people will be impressed. And this guy's journey is definitely an impressive one. And yeah, glad I met this local couple. I will stay in touch. And they're my first Mongolian friends here in this country. And yeah, that was interesting. It was also interesting because yesterday, when I was walking in Ulaanbaatar from one museum to the next, some guy on the street stopped me. He said, hey, where are you from? And I looked at him. I said, yeah, I'm from Germany. I'm traveling here. And then I said, why? He said, yeah, like, if you want, come along with me to Bible studies. Man, I was surprised. I mean, I didn't expect some random guy on the street inviting me to Bible studies. And he looked friendly. He was smiling. So, yeah, I said, yeah, like, thank you for the invitation, obviously. But I said, yeah, I'm only here for a few days, and right now I'm going from a museum to the other, and looking at the city. And yeah, it's not that hard to understand if you have stories like the first couples, and then people on the street also inviting you for some studies, that certain religions or spiritual directions can spread across a city or region. This is what I draw from all of these experiences. And I think, given with the urbanization globally, cities becoming bigger, family structures being pulled apart sometimes because the kids or your cousins might be in a different city, like the relatives are spread across. I think it's easier to be under some influences, whether it's your group of friends, or whether it's your consumption of certain beverages or food, or whether it's your consumption of certain entertainment or religious guidances. That's my recap and summary for you. And if you know more about these topics, feel free to ping me. Always curious to listen. And I hope you found it exciting. And yeah, stay tuned for more. Follow me and interact. See you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.